everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today's Monday and we just had a week of half term, and this is why no videos came out last week. I forgot to give you the heads up that there won't be a video, and generally in between half terms I'm just so busy that these days I have no time to prepare videos ahead of time. So I'm trying to multitask as much as I can, and there's just been so many projects going on in the background that you're not aware of, and I will be sharing them as they come out more and more. Okay, so I have got two watercolor palettes here. I'm intending to use fine liners. So I've got a platinum carbon ink pen. This has a waterproof ink, which is great for fine lines when I'm sketching florals, but I also like to sketch berries with a thicker nib, and this is also permanent, and it's Pigma Micron 05, and they are great to fill in a slightly larger area because they have a soft kind of nib that glides better. Well, it's not soft, but it's sort of, because it's round, it glides better as opposed to a pointy, sharp fountain pen nib, which would irritate the fibers of the paper. Okay, I have two watercolor palettes. Couldn't decide which one, and frankly only a couple of colors are repeating through these palettes that I put together myself. So there is the botanical palette, and that's the colorful landscapes palette. Both of the videos should be available on my channel. I'll try to link them up somewhere in the cards, hopefully up there. And then I have just a selection. I'm not even sure which colors I will be using exactly. I have got some Molotov acrylic markers, and some of them are 2mm and some of them are 1.5. And just to show you the difference, you're going to get a different mark with them. Okay, and I also have a couple of uni Poscas, also different nibs. So we've got here PC1M and PC1MR, and this is what these nibs look like. All right, let's crack on. So what we're going to be doing is something like this illustration, and I put a picture of it up on Instagram. I really enjoyed sketching it. The satisfaction of the summer colors and the florals and all that good stuff. The weather is still kind of touch and go here in UK. Really is all over the place. I am just missing the color, and I'm missing the florals and all of that good stuff. So let's start by illustrating first, and just start with the main flower. So lately I have been into these more kind of simplified flower shapes, just to block out rather than drawing every single petal. So I tend to start somewhere in kind of middle of the paper, almost hiding beneath this one, so kind of sliding under. And third one, I'm going to do the same, and I will create a variation in size. So then very simply, I'm going to, actually for this part, it'd be good to go to our micron and just add these centers. Keep in mind the center of this flower is roughly here. Okay, so that's our little kind of cluster of the main flowers. And then I could just try and see where I want to fill in the area. So I kind of like there to be sort of elongated, like going across the paper. So let's see, I'm just going to illustrate these flowers right here. I have been working on a couple of new stamp sets. For those of you who have been enjoying my stamp sets, you might be excited to hear that. And hopefully sometime in June I can launch them. There is going to be a floral set, which I think you may love. it's kind of, the inspiration is from the summer, and there's going to be a lot of leafy parts as well as some gorgeous floral blossoms. And I think for those of you who find drawing slightly more of a kind of lingering task that you want to get done and over with to get to your watercolors, the stamp sets really help you out with that. You can just stamp whatever floral composition you want, and like with my previous stamping sets, it's about building your own compositions, and every time you can create a new looking floral cluster just with one stamping set. So it's not a finished illustration. I want you to create the illustration and basically enjoy getting straight into the watercolor bit of it. So now I'm going to just add these kind of like berries, or they're not berries, but maybe sort of like pods of some sort. And they just add a great variety of shape and texture. So I'm just going to add these nice contrasting blackberries. I really like this look of adding modern touch to floral illustrations, and I think it's so much fun because, you know, you don't have to have a realistic illustration at all. You can have so much fun just building things and create your own kind of almost fantasy flowers. So now I'm just adding another textural detail and effect by adding these little almost fiber-like ends to the illustration. So I think this is quite pretty. I'm possibly going to add something else here, but really I don't want it to be too strong at all, but something is missing here. So I'm thinking I might just do this again here. I quite like that sort of berry effect. Let me know how the summer is going in your country. I mean, we hardly had any spring here in UK. Really a handful of lovely days. There were a few, but just not as much as the previous years, really. Hopefully the summer will be better than the spring. Okay, so I think this is looking quite good. I might just add a couple of leaves here and there, and that is it. Literally don't need to do anything else. It's not always, but sometimes I like to bring a little line across so that it looks different to the buds, for example, or to the pods. So here I haven't decided, is it going to be a bud or a pod or what it is going to be? Yeah, I may leave that as a pod just to have some bit more interest here down below. Okay, so that has been super easy, but even if that part to you is more of a chore, then you can use stamp sets to help yourself with that part. I'm going to start with adding color to my flowers, and let's see, I'm going to go into quinacridone red light. So what I'm going to do here is think about our values. So we want to have something medium value. Usually you start with medium value, and then at the end you might consider adding some lighter values or darker values depending where you want to take this. So now I'm just going to have fun and just wiggle my brush and add some lovely blossoms and create like a nice textural effect. Also, if I wanted to lift some color, I'm going to dry my brush and just lift the color around the center. It may still sip in, but I'm just going to help it a little like that. And now I'm thinking, let's see, deep scarlet, that's a good color. So that might be our contrasting color for this flower. again leaving the center of the flower untouched. Remember, we want to have this watercolor effect. We don't want to forget about the lovely effects that you can create with watercolor. That is why I just love adding water and letting it kind of do its own thing. I'm going to go back into deep scarlet and in some areas bring that color back. All right, so then I want something quite lovely and pink in there, and I'm going to go to my opera pink, but I'm going to dilute it, so I don't want it to be as screaming as I had it here. I want it to be quite light and pretty because these flowers are very delicate, so I want to create that kind of watercolor look for them. So I'm just pulling the watercolor through like so. If there is a petal that's laying underneath, then you need to wait for this watercolor to dry, and that way you could then, for example, make it slightly darker to push it back into the background. Also, while things are dry, I'm going to dab off excess water and brush off the ends to create that lovely lighter end bit, and that's also called the lifting technique, and it creates a lovely gradient. Okay, now I'd like to consider what kind of color. In fact, with this one I might do another glaze. I might glaze a layer of color on top of it just to bring some zest to it. I might consider what color to add to my next and final flower. The orange would do quite nice, the Aussie Red Gold. I think that would be a lovely color. Okay, I'm gonna go for Aussie Red Gold. So I'm going to try be careful around the red flower because that is still pretty wet, and if I'm going to touch it, both colors will merge together, and that might be a look actually. It may create something interesting, so you might want to experiment with your watercolors when you're doing that. Apologies about my card getting full, of course. I was talking about experimenting and letting the red flow into the orange, which I've done here, and so then the two colors kind of migrate and you get another color. So let's now look into our foliage. Once we've done the foliage, I'll get a better idea what to do with the pot colors. We might want them to be quite sort of saturated and add contrast. Okay, color wise, I want something zesty green, so I'm going to take a bit of green gold and mix in a bit of my chartreuse. By the way, if you're new, I do have watercolor out, and if you're interested, it's available on my website alyonacreates.com. And if you're from Canada, currently I'm selling for Canada on my Etsy shop, just because of how complicated the tax system is in Canada. There is like a different tax that I need to apply for like every state or something. I don't know. I love painting. That's where my passion lies. But yeah, so I just made it available for my Canadian customers because I had so many before this whole ordeal with Etsy, and so although I never wanted to sell on Etsy again, I have made the exception and put some of my products there for my devoted Canadian customers who have been supporting me throughout the years, so thank you so much. And yeah, so check it out. Okay, I'm gonna go back into my chartreuse green. Okay, we have one more left. So I have opted for this kind of muddy mossy green for my leaves, with a few of the brighter colors just to break things down a little bit. Thinking I might just add a little bit of this color into this chartreuse green just to blend it through a little bit. Same thing here, just to blend it. So if you want to blend, wash your brush off and just barely with anything on the brush, just smoothen the edges of that darker color that you just added to. That way you won't have a hard edge to it. Okay, now it's time to add a bit of that pink again into that petal. So I'm going to go back into my pink and possibly intensify it slightly to suggest a darker kind of petal, so it's more in the shade in the background, but we do need to also lift some of it so it's not throughout suddenly a dark leaf. Okay, now we're going to go back into a really kind of dry mix of opera pink, and we're going to add this color into the very bottom bit of the petal. And here I do want it to have a hard edge and dry like that. Right, so we will add green to the little pots that are holding the petals. Let me go over with another layer and glaze this flower here. So this is a very thick mix of the quinacridone red light. It's also a very staining color, so it's not forgiving. If you got it somewhere, you might as well just go along and create a fake line. And now with a wet brush, but not too wet, we're going to just blend this into the center. And then just also lift some of it too, so you kind of get this lovely gradient. If there is a hard line that has formed, again go back in over the line, and this time straight after, controlling your water on the brush, go over that line and just massage it with the tip of it, or with the tip of the brush. So then let's see, what colors should we go for the pots? I feel like, I don't know, I'm not a purple girl, and you will see there is not really a purple in my palette, but I kind of feel like the purple would really stand out quite nicely. So let's see if I can mix up a purple that I would enjoy. Okay, to create a purple, I'm going to go into opera pink. And cobalt blue. Should get quite a zesty purple. Oh, that's quite good. Let's see if I just add a bit more of the cobalt to have more of a blue, like a more of a cool toned purple. Do I like this? I think that looks quite nice. So I might hate it in a second, but let's see. Now this purple works really beautifully with this green. I'm just going to swap to a smaller brush. Let's see, what do we have here? Round 1, and that will give me more control. So here I want the darker parts to be towards the top part of the pot. Now it could be a pot, it could be like a bud, a flower bud that's about to open, hasn't opened yet. You know, it's something that you leave open to the interpretation. So whoever is looking at this can kind of decide what they want to see. That's what I like about modern flowers. that you can take a petal shape and do whatever you want with it. So once you have done the petal or the bud or the blossom, you just pull it down. Either you start and pull it down, or you start whichever way you want and then go back and pull it down, if that makes sense. Also, what we're going to add here is a beautiful separation of pigments. As you can see, the pinks from the opera pink and the cobalt blue. Cobalt blue is something that anyone should have in their palette if you love to illustrate flowers, because you are going to add this gorgeous separation, which again connects the pink back to the opera pink that we have here. So that's a really nice thing to do. So far all the colors are sitting nicely, except for this one. I have to tell you, like, this color to me is clashing a little bit with the purple. So we can add texture on top of it with acrylic markers, and that means that we will put that color slightly more into the background. But before we do that, we need to also add a little bit of color here, and I'm thinking I'm gonna go for this Agalo. Let's go for that. The Agalo Fig Green, I think it's called. Let's just put it here. It's kind of like a nice milky color. Reminds me of gouache. So if you wanted something quite solid, if you already have a lot of transparency in your illustration, another great color to have in your palette. And that works really nicely here. I'm going to let this dry fully, and we're going to, let me see, I'm just going to add a bit more color here to this flower. Just around. So I'm going to leave it dry fully, and then I'm going to revisit it and I'll show you how to add markers over the top of it. I think it's pretty much dry, so all of these flowers are dry except for there's a little puddle right here. So I'll be cautious of that, and I will leave this flower to detail last. So I just wanted to show you here, I wasn't too happy with how these petals just stood out a little bit too much with the green on their own, so I added a little bit of marking to push the color back, because the color of the marker was very similar to these leaves, and so therefore it just kind of connects the two. So now let's see, I've got a number of colors here, and I'm thinking I might go with a either peach or a white. Maybe a white would be a good color. So I'm going to go with the Molotov Signal White. So I'm just going to start, actually, I forgot. Let's just add a little skirting around the center. Then I'm just going to fill in with color. And then from the edge, I'm going to go into the petal. Just going to go over and trace on top of the lines that I wasn't satisfied with. And now just make sure you place the lines fairly close, because that will take the focus of the color that we don't want. You also can do sparse lines and then go in between later and add more lines. So for example here, and then you go in and you add a line in between like so. You can do straight lines, you can do wavy lines, whatever you prefer in the moment. I'm just going to go ahead and add these lines. And you can see how it already looks a lot better. I'm just going to do half of the flower to show you the difference. That looks to me a lot better. So I'm just going to continue and finish the entire flower. Now I'm going to take this kind of neon color. It's called Neon Yellow Fluorescent. And I'm thinking of adding a few marks on the leaves. Just because it's so bright and out there, I'm just going to add it on one half of the petal. I'm just adding it onto the watercolor portion of the leaf, and also we'll sprinkle the same color around here somewhere. It really glows nicely and it pops beautifully. I'm also going to consider which flower I should add it on. I'll go on the red because I think again that will pop nicely on this flower here. Just a few of them closer to the center. And then I will go in with the white, and I'm thinking just that same white that I had, just create dots of white. This time taking them out a little bit further onto the flower. So that is it. I hope it didn't take too long, but it's a lot of fun to add a bit of doodle, play with your colors, enjoy the summer, at least in your sketchbook. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, leave a comment, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.